Welcome to Below the Forest Floor. Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween.
We've missed you all so much, and after trying out new career paths, we discovered that our personal businesses are what's most important to us in achieving our dreams, like Below the Forest Floor. Today's episode is going to be about a classic Halloween fear and icon, Scarecrows. This idea was actually provided by my amazing partner and co-host, Ryan.
Hello.
How you feel to be back?
It feels great. Yeah, so do you want me to just kind of say what my question to you about this was to start it, or do you want to?
What do you mean, question?
Oh, our podcast episode for today.
Sure, go ahead.
So we were thinking of, because we have a list of ideas that we have, and for different future podcast episodes and everything like that. Well, I started thinking about it we're coming up on Halloween. She wanted to have a Halloween themed episode coming out for Halloween this year, and I was thinking, well, why don't we try to figure out how the Scarecrow became associated with Halloween? And she liked it so much, we immediately started going for it.
Yep. And so today's episode is all about scarecrows, the history, the scary stuff, basically what every episode is always about. So, would you like me to get started, or would you like to get started?
I also want to add in that I want to kind of talk towards the end about scarecrows in modern media, because it's kind of like what I've normally been doing in a lot of our episodes, where it's like, oh, whatever the thing is that we're doing at that moment, it's like, oh, here's some video games, TV shows, movies, comics, books, whatever, that have these things in them.
Of course. So, alright, let's get started. As always, we will start with the spooky, speak on the history, then finally talk about our own personal thoughts and theories. We are starting off tonight with a real life story that happened and was recorded in a newspaper. On December 8th, 1953, a newspaper article from the Brisbane Telegraph released a story about an incident where a scarecrow was much more than just decor. According to the information obtained, there was a group of men that were getting rid of underbrush and by burning it. In the underbrush, they noticed an old, tattered scarecrow and decided to throw it onto the fire. As the fire burned, the outside of the scarecrow faded away, revealing human bones. The men went back to search the area where the scarecrow was found and noticed a skull and a set of false teeth. After taking the items to get checked out, it was revealed by a dentist that the teeth belonged to an Ethel Winifred Collins Morris. This 66-year-old woman had been said to have been missing since July 21st.
Wow.
Yep, that was a real life story I came across that had to do with the scarecrow. So I guess
That's crazy. What year was that?
1953.
Oh, really? That wasn't like a long time ago or anything.
No, it was not.
Wow.
And that's the thing, like, you know how some people are like, they look at scarecrows and they're so uncanny valley feeling, and they're like, they feel almost human. This was a human.
Yeah. Because I know that the original, like the idea of using a scarecrow for crops and stuff like that was, what was it? It was came over from German immigrants.
Yeah.
So it was like, I don't remember when they mainly immigrated to the US or anything like that, but I would have just, in my head, I'm just thinking a lot longer ago than, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. And I can't wait to tell you more information on the history later, since you're talking about it. So this story is from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and it is about a scarecrow named Harold. When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually, they stayed there with the cows for 2 months, then they brought them back down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but oh, it was boring. All day the two men tended their cows. All night they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and then went to sleep. Everything remained the same until Thomas had an idea to make a human-sized scarecrow. Thomas commented on the joy of making it and putting it in the garden to scare the crows. When Alfred heard this, he decided to base the appearance of Harold, a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw and gave the scarecrow Harold's characteristics along with naming it after him. Each morning on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night they brought him inside so that he wouldn't get ruined if it rained. When they were feeling playful, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" Then the other, making believe he was Harold, would answer in a crazy voice, very slowly. They would both laugh, but not Harold. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take the food they were eating, which they both were sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like that stew, Harold?" he would ask. "Well, you better eat it or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter. One night, after Thomas had wiped Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold," Thomas said. "I was watching him when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred asked. "He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible." "Let's throw him in the fire," Thomas said, "and that will be that." "Let's not do anything stupid," said Alfred. "We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind. For now, let's just keep an eye on him." So they left Harold sitting in the corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then the doll grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe a mouse or something had gotten inside Harold and were making those sounds. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning they put Harold out on the garden, and each night they brought him back into the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. "Harold is growing," he said. "I was thinking the same thing," Thomas said. "Maybe it's our imagination," Alfred replied. "We've been up in this mountain for too long." The next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on his hind legs. All day and all night he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in a far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid. They decided to take the cows down into the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped a great danger and began joking and singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. Neither one wanted to go back for them, but the stools would cost a lot to replace. "There really is nothing to be afraid of," they told one another. "After all, what could a doll do?" They decided to draw straws to see which one would go back, and they did. Thomas was the one to go back. After Thomas told Alfred that he would catch up with him, Alfred walked toward the valley. But when Alfred came to a rise in the path, he looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere, but he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again. As Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun. For all of us out here who remember that we were told in school that scarecrows were made to scare birds away from crops, we probably didn't expect a story like this.
That was just creepy a bit. Like, Uh, where do we even really start with that?
Let's try to unpack this.
Yeah, so
Did that trip you out?
a bit of it, yeah,
What tripped
definitely.
you out about it?
When initially just like, I guess I was getting so into the story that when you had said it's like Harold got up and walked out, my brain just immediately just thought of like, oh, it's just one of the people, you know, like I completely forgot that that was
The doll.
the doll. And yeah, so that was the thing. I completely spaced on that. Just like, oh, that's normal. And then the rest of the story talking about like how it was moving and everything on top of the roof. It was just like a person wouldn't be necessarily doing that like in a story. It's just weird to me.
Yeah, and it kind of freaked me out because that's kind of a story that my aunt had. And
Oh yeah.
my aunt cannot read. She's not able to read stories or anything, so she could have never read this book. And she told us a story about her doll that she threw up on the roof because they believed it was haunted, and the doll would run across back and forth on top of the roof at night playing with a ball that was up there also. And this reminded me a lot of that.
It does actually sound a lot like that. It does, yeah.
And so when I read that, I got even more creeped out because
Maybe dolls just really like running back and forth on top of roofs.
I mean, if you were an inanimate object and suddenly had the ability to move, I'd probably never stop moving.
I would get up on the roof and move around too.
Yeah, and so I don't know if you've ever seen Shin-Chan.
A bit.
Okay,
I remember you showed it to me.
it's this anime where basically a young boy, goes through weird stuff in his life, and there's this episode where his friend's mother is being treated badly by her partner, and his friend's mother and his friend have this large doll that is a bunny, and they hit the bunny when they have a bad day, and one day the bunny comes to life to get its revenge for always being treated badly. And
Oh yeah.
that kind of this kind of reminded me of that, and how people say that dolls can come to life because of certain magical qualities, like either they've been around a long time or they've been treated a certain way and a spirit goes within them. Or there's also those things where people talk about where inanimate objects can just get a spirit of its own,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the situation where I kind of felt like there was so much hatred put into Harold that it was like their punishment for him to come to life.
And I hear that in a lot of stories also when it comes to like dolls and things like that. There's so many stories of like people doing something bad to a doll and then just, bad stuff happening shortly after that because of something that just held on with the doll.
Yeah. And this is something that I completely could see as not just like a scary story, but a movie would be fantastic of something like this, to see the lesson learned, of treating something badly.
I would say I believe there is. It's not, it's not Chucky, of course, because Chucky was different. But I think that the movies for the Chucky movies would be so much more interesting, I personally think, if they started off in that kind of way as well.
Right.
Where like, the doll didn't just come to life. What if the doll was actually, just being mistreated? Or maybe it did happen that way, but none of us really know because maybe it was just an off-screen kind of thing.
I don't even remember Chucky, like how it started.
I don't remember a lot of it either, really.
For all we know, that's probably how it started.
Yeah, people are like that are die-hard Chucky fans are like, that is the story.
It's like, cool. Anyway. Sorry, I don't want to talk about Chucky too much because I am very afraid of haunted dolls. It's like,
what about small soldiers?
That is also very creepy to me. Any inanimate object that comes to life or has a life of its own. So this was a very creepy episode for me to do.
I love that movie
Thanks
so
a
much.
lot, Ryan.
Uh-huh.
Very nice of you to do that.
It's on Halloween, so.
Yep, so I'm scared. All right, so let's talk about the history.
Maybe the history will help you feel better.
We'll see about that. It's actually like the very, very beginning of the history is actually a little interesting and kind of scary a little bit. To me, it is, at least.
Okay.
So, scarecrows were also once used to help capture food. Did you know that?
Vaguely. I don't remember much about it. I remember bits and pieces, but...
Back in 2500 BC, scarecrows were used in Egypt with a net around them. The farmers would scare quail into the nets and would capture the quail that came to eat the crops, and then they would eat the quail for dinner.
Okay.
So they were basically tools, not just for frightening the birds, but for also having something to eat later in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And according to Lancaster Farmland Trust, the trend of scarecrows then spread to Greece, where the wooden statues of Greek gods were placed in fields. Then the Romans found out about it and copied them. But the Romans were the ones that introduced the scarecrow to Europe.
Yeah.
As they marched through the streets of Europe with scarecrows in hand, trying to scare the Europeans. The reason that Europe thought the idea of scarecrows was a great idea was because at one point they used, can you guess?
Children.
As scarecrows.
Yep.
And they
out
had the
in
kids,
fields with rocks.
They would throw rocks at the birds in the fields.
I do remember that one.
My God, can you imagine? Can you imagine being told, go stand in the field and throw rocks at birds? But Mom, I'm tired. Throw rocks at birds.
Hey, but after the end of the year, that kid got pretty good at like throwing rocks at birds. I'll tell you that.
Unless he just always had awful aim and it just never got better. In relation to Halloween, scarecrows can be considered the original American boogeyman. The reason for this is because many people believe that scarecrows were originally brought over to the US by German immigrants, as Ryan said earlier. And they named these decorations Bootsaman. Bootsaman sounds like boogeyman.
Ah, it does.
And
I kind of see where that came from then.
Yeah, and stories were made up about the scarecrows to keep children out of the fields. This time, I guess they didn't want them in there throwing rocks at birds. They were probably eating the food.
You know, can you imagine the kid that's out there, like, he just starts getting bored, so he starts eating some of the crops, and it's like he just blames the birds?
Well, here's the thing. When my mom was little and they made her work in the fields and pick different fruits and stuff, her and her siblings would actually eat some of the fruit while they were picking it.
Yeah.
So they were not invited back to some of these places. In Japan, though, there is a whole god created in the likeness of a scarecrow.
Oh, I don't remember the name, but I remember hearing about that.
Kuebiko. This god is the god of folk wisdom, knowledge, and agriculture, and is represented in Japanese mythology as a scarecrow who cannot walk but has comprehensive awareness. This makes the scarecrow very wise and revered for his wisdom because he watches the world around him and he absorbs this information of what he sees happening.
Oh.
Similarly, in Cambodia, there is a scarecrow called Ting Mong that isn't just there for a physical purpose. It is said that these scarecrows are also used to scare away the plague.
Yeah. Oh, also, I didn't catch it. When you were talking about the Japanese scarecrow, did you mention what book it came from?
I did not.
It's because I was looking it up at the same time that you were telling it. The book is called Kojiki.
Mm-hmm.
And it is in, what is it? First recorded references of scarecrows. It's from the oldest book in the history of Japan called Kojiki.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Or it might be Kojiki. Sounds about right.
Speaking of scaring away the plague and birds, some modern witchcraft you can do with scarecrows would be to use an enchanted one on your front porch to ward off trespassers. W's are hard today. And to be quite honest, if I saw someone had a year-round scarecrow on their front porch, I would definitely be a bit hesitant to bother them.
I've actually wanted one.
What?
Yeah.
When were you going to tell me? We've been together for 8 years.
I thought that I have before. I know that like every time that Halloween comes around, I mention the idea that my brother and I had for making the mushroom head scarecrow from one of Mushroom Head's music videos. It has like the X face and everything on it, but we wanted to make a scarecrow with a pumpkin head with a carved face in it, but make it so the pumpkin can be basically kept year round. So basically just use like foam or something like that. But knowing that it is something, and we'll get into, I'm sure, later on, because I'm pretty sure that you had found this too, but the actual answer to the question of how did scarecrows become, like a Halloween icon kind of thing, but because of the reason for, like, with that answer is the main reason why I would like to try to have a year-round scarecrow also, which is a little bit of what you just mentioned as well about like warding away like bad spirits and things.
Well, would you like to give the answer?
I think we should wait till the end.
We're almost at the end.
Oh, are we? Okay. Okay, so yes, technically it is. I'll go into a little bit more also that I've figured out the last little bit here, but yeah, because of the Black Plague and stuff, it is. So, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to actually like word this so it doesn't sound stupid. But yeah, scarecrows became a Halloween like kind of icon and kind of like the symbol for Halloween because they were used to ward off evil spirits, and because Halloween is known as the time of like where the veil for evil spirits and things is thinnest. Scarecrows were used more often because of that, it was more important to use them at that time. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Because I did not remember your question.
Yeah, they were used symbolically to ward off evil spirits and protect crops during harvest seasons, and because like harvest festivals always kind of happened around, in the autumn and fall, and then Halloween landed at the same time.
And it represents the harvest.
So how much more do you have? Because then I'll go into my part.
We are on to the opinions.
Okay, so I'll do mine then, and then we can go opinions, because you might have opinions on the things that I'm getting.
I definitely have opinions on these things.
So I want to kind of go into just some like notable scarecrows that are in the modern media, so TV shows, movies, video games, that such. So, of course. Oh, also a funny part about this, as I was making this list, the one that I completely forgot about until like just a couple of minutes ago is, I'm just gonna go with that one first. As I was making this list, I forgot about the scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz.
Oh.
I was thinking like more Halloween-y, scary scarecrows, so my brain was just like not going anywhere near Wizard of Oz.
Right.
But yeah, so the scarecrow from Wizard of Oz, the scarecrow from Batman. So I can never remember his name. You were more of a Batman fan than me. What was? What was his name? Oh, okay. I'm gonna look that up real quick.
I'll look it up. You keep talking.
All right. There was also the pagan god that was in Supernatural that had possessed a scarecrow in the apple orchard in that small town.
Jonathan Crane.
Yes, I remember it was Crane. I kept wanting to say Ichabod, and I was like, that's Sleepy Hollow. But I didn't because a lot of the people have the same names in a lot of these things too. So, but yeah, in video games there is Fiddlesticks from League of Legends, of course. Gotta go with that scarecrow. And there was a movie series that I have not seen called The Messengers, which is about that has possessed scarecrow in it. Was that thunder?
Yes, as we are recording this episode, there is thunder outside.
I was wondering if it was gonna rain today. And then the Curse of the Scarecrow. Straya wants to yell back at the
the thunder for scaring
thunder.
us.
The Curse of the Scarecrow series, another set of movies that I have not seen. There's a TV show or a TV movie called Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. Never heard about that, but that's pretty much the ones that I could think of right offhand when I was making this list. So
if you guys want to watch anything with scarecrows for Halloween after you listen to this episode, feel free to look through that list that we just talked about.
Oh, definitely look into like the Fiddlesticks lore. That is amazing. I love that.
So now on to our opinions. My opinion is that there are so many scary stories and legends of scarecrows out there because they are just plain scary. It's in the name, dang it. They are people-sized dolls made to purposefully be frightening. I already had a huge fear of dolls personally, but to know that there are some out there with stories
A human-sized doll.
Yeah, coming to life and unaliving people is spooky as heck. And when you really think about it, haunted dolls are super common these days due to some of them having been around for ages.
Oh, definitely.
People do believe that an object is old enough. If an object is old enough, it can gain spiritual awareness. So maybe there's something like that going on here. And that reminds me of Harold's story, which they put so much hatred into something that it came to life. Like, can you imagine like how much hatred how badly they treated this scarecrow that it came to freaking life?
Okay, so I have, since we do often get into like theory crafting stuff towards the end of these, I do actually have a little bit of a thought. It's not gonna it's kind of just secluded to the scarecrow bit, not necessarily like the dolls that come alive from that stuff, but it might have something to do with it. But okay, so I'm a huge fan of the movie The Crow. We were talking about that yesterday. So with that story, not going into spoilers if anybody hasn't seen a movie that, came out in 94.
I haven't.
So basically this guy and his girlfriend were brutally murdered, and because of his girlfriend being killed like that also, his spirit wasn't able to rest, so a crow brought him, because they talk about how, like, in a lot of different folklore, crows are kind of like the messengers that take you, kind of like how in, what was it? In Greek mythology, it was Charon, and, like, kind of like the ferryman that takes you over the other side. But what the crow did for this guy was that he brought him back for vengeance, basically. So if you think about it, it's like scarecrows have a big part with crows in general. They're it's in the name. It's supposed to be for scaring crows and everything. So they have a big kind of like a connection with crows. I wonder if, like, these things were treated so poorly and everything like that the crows that were always around them, because you always see a scarecrow, you see crows just sitting on the shoulders and everything. Maybe there's a connection there that the crows are moving someone's spirit across, but then just kind of drop it into a scarecrow for it to get its vengeance on anyone or someone.
Horrifying. I hate that idea.
I have an idea for a story now.
Well, yes, you do, because that was actually really, really freaking scary and creepy. And, it's true. I do end up seeing a lot more scarecrows just chilling around, or crows. Scarecrows? Scary crows?
There you go. Get a big wooden crow that's out in a field with a scarecrow sitting on its shoulder.
What? A scarecrow sitting on the crow's shoulder?
Yeah, because that's what it sounded like when you were going. You were talking about the scarecrow on the shoulder. Oh, then you stopped for a second, so I was like, yeah, scarecrow on top of scarecrow. To scare a crow.
Oh my god, no, what I meant to say before I just began to babble endlessly about nothing. This is why I love just like recording crazily, like no edits, just going at it, because I just say the wildest shit. I'm always really surprised to see how many crows are just surrounding scarecrows. They're not even
they don't do
anymore.
They don't do a very good job of it anymore. Which I actually think that has partly to blame with crows becoming more accustomed and comfortable around people. So like, because scarecrows were made like a person because they were always scared of them, a person would come around and they'd just flock off.
Right, flock off. I see what you did there.
But I wonder if because they've started getting more used to seeing people and stuff like that, and maybe they're getting used to seeing people because of the scarecrows.
Right.
So it's like, this thing's not moving. It's not like it's not trying to hit us or anything like we thought. So
yeah, crows are really smart. So I feel
oh
like
yeah,
after
definitely.
The first couple of decades, they kind of figured it out. They were like, that's not a real person.
Yeah.
Don't look like a real person. They'll smell like a real person.
And you can kind of tell the sign of the times with that too, where it's like people thought that those birds were that dumb back then, but like nowadays, that's probably why so scarecrows aren't that good at scaring crows anymore, so that's why they became a Halloween icon, because we have all these scarecrows that are not being used anymore because they're out of a job. So they
that's the perfect way to end the episode, to be quite honest. Give scarecrows their jobs back.
What was because before Halloween, what's the nearest holiday before then?
Goodness if I know.
I can't. It's a while before, but like
after it's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I know, and that's right around your birthday.
Because I love food.
That too. But can you imagine, like, a month before Halloween, putting a sign outside that says "Now hiring Scarecrow"?
That is so
cute. And
then
around Halloween, then you actually put the Scarecrow up because you got one.
Did you hear about rich people being...
Maybe have a sign on it that says recently hired, or have like a "Hi, my name is" or whatever, like one of those sticky tags, because they don't have their ID
I want
yet.
one that says they have 10 jobs. Anyways.
One of them, just like every day of the week, someone else in the neighborhood has it in their yard.
The scarecrows are coming for your jobs, y'all. But like, have you heard about the rich people that pay people to hang out in their gardens dressed as gnomes?
What?
It just reminded me of that.
Should we wait for a gnome episode, or do we even want to do a gnome episode?
I think we did a gnome episode, this one.
I mean, okay, so technically yes, but I mean like going into more gnome, less just the one species of gnome.
Oh, yeah, we can do that. We can go more full gnome-esque.
Because there's way more than just that.
Yeah, there are. The Duendes are just the one that personally attacked my family. So.
Yeah, which, shout out to an older episode, which was like maybe, what was it, like maybe your third episode, I think.
I don't remember.
Did you do that one with me, or did you do that one by yourself?
I can't remember.
Okay, never mind.
Point is, if you want to listen to more scary things, go check out our other episodes. And the one with Duendes is just, it's freaking creepy and freaky and weird, and it happened to my grandmother. So like, spooky. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's Halloween. Thin veil. But whether scarecrows are able to come to life or not, they are welcome down here with us below the forest floor. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did, and have a happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Bye.
Bye.